Welcome back to my series I'd like to call Reviews of Lightsabers that companies send me that I'm going to do despite this being an RPG review channel because I really love high-end lightsabers and you should too. Today we're going to be unboxing and taking a close look at the Vader Episode 5 saber from nSaber. This is a company that ships out of Hong Kong. They asked me which saber I wanted to take a look at, and I basically looked for anything from the original trilogy. I'm pretty old school when it comes to Star Wars stuff, with the exception of maybe the Clone Wars series and Andor. But anyway, the Vader Episode 5 saber caught my eye. It seemed cool. If this or any saber from nSaber is something you want to start your collection with or add to your collection, I have a link down below that will knock the price down a little bit and it will also help support the channel. This saber took about a week to arrive at my doorstep from the time it actually shipped, and I got it in great condition. The first thing that you sort of notice are these gloves. These are so you can handle the hilt without getting fingerprints on them. A bit silly if you ask me, but let's give them a shot. The hilt itself is indeed a shiny relic. At the pommel end you have a speaker grill, rubber rail grips. Inside the blade end you can see some LED lights as well as pogo pin contacts for the Neo Pixel blade. I'll explain that in a minute. Screen accuracy wise, this seems about 95 to 98% accurate, with the exception of this removable label. The box also comes with a manual. I recommend going online for all the specifics, and I'll show you how to do it in this video. The print on this physical manual is a bit small. The box labeled display stand contains a thick acrylic stand. Each panel has a protective layer that you have to peel off before assembly. The box labeled toolkit contains a metal nSaber's placard with sticky side, which is meant for the base of the display stand. The charge cable is a USB 1.0 to USB-C. These are extra rubber rail grips. These have a pretty strong adhesive backing, but the hope is that you never have to put that to the test. One extra hex screw and a small hex key for tightening the blade. And here's a blade plug. This is not screen accurate or anything. It's just sort of their generic standard blade plug. Pretty nice with the metal component there. Okay, so here's where the saber is a bit special. At the connecting end of the 32.5-inch high impact plastic blade is a series of 3 concentric contact rings. If you've never seen this before, this is NeoPixel technology. Basically, instead of having a single light array in the hilt illuminating an empty plastic blade tube, you have 2 LED strips inside the length of the blade, and the outer layers of the blade are made of a translucent white plastic in order to diffuse the lights from the diodes. The metal contacts here connect to those pogo pins we saw earlier inside the hilt and electronically control the color and illumination pattern of the LED strips, allowing you to have multiple colors and animations in the blade. It's pretty revolutionary if you've never seen it before. You can get to the inside of the hilt by unscrewing the pommel end. I like that there's a little handle here for you to grab onto to pull out the internal assembly. It also acts as a guard to protect the speaker that is right underneath. Inside is the chipboard and sound card, which looks to be in the shape and format of a SIM card. And there's the rechargeable 3.7 volt battery. This battery does not come out very easily, but that's fine because you can charge it with the port that is built into this internal assembly anyway. You can take off the plastic end piece on the blade end of the hilt by unscrewing this screw, but there's actually no reason to do so. Well, actually, I did have to take this off in order to remove the blade plug by hand once I stuck it in there. Attaching the blade requires loosening 2 hex screws, inserting the blade all the way, and then tightening the 2 screws. It's a pretty simple process, but you want to be intentional and careful about not stripping the screw heads. The fewer times you attach and remove the blade, the better. So there's actually an app for this saber. On iPhones, it's called Force Park, and I'm not sure if that's named after the Darth Maul actor Ray Park, since he's a lightsaber stunt master. Anyway, it's free. You just download it and then activate the saber and connect via Bluetooth. In the app, you can control virtually every aspect of the sound and lights. I would suggest first getting accustomed to the existing sound fonts and lights before going in and changing them. But eventually, if you really want to hone in on just your favorites or tweak settings to be exactly the way you want them, you'll need to use this app. You can also just use the saber without the app. The way the physical saber actually works is that you have 2 buttons. On this particular hilt, it looks like one button, but it's actually two. The paper instruction manual is a bit hard to read, so you might need to use the same instructions that can be found on the nSaber website. The half of the button that is towards the blade is referred to as the power button, and the half facing the pommel is the aux button. There are a lot of things you can do with these two buttons, and it's probably pretty boring to go through them all, so I'll just leave them here. One of the cooler features of this saber is the quick twist to power on and off. It takes a little practice to get the twist down, but once you do, it really adds to the immersion of handling a pretend lightsaber. Let's go through each of the default sound and light presets one by one and see what this saber can do. One important thing to note is that the sound card can hold 25 customizable sound and light groups, and you can cycle through each one by tapping the aux button. At first I thought you had to cycle through all of them to get to a previous one, but actually you can go back by holding the aux button, hold the saber upward, and quickly twist the saber. It actually says this in the manual, but it isn't super clear about the function being for backwards selection. One other thing to note is that the names of the fonts on the app are not always the exact match of what you hear when selecting the font on the saber itself. So for maximum clarity, I'm going to display the name of the sound font from the app as well as what is being played on the saber when I select the font. Actually, one last thing. Each sound font comes with a half dozen different sounds. One for swinging, one for deflecting, a blaster shot, one for lockup, which is continuous, one for clashing with another saber, a force blast sound, a continuous sound for melting, a stab sound, and a continuous drag sound. I'm only going to be demonstrating the swing and the clash sound for each font because otherwise it would take forever and it might also get a little repetitive.
Kestis. Rey Skywalker.
I am the Inquisitor.
Tell me, is this training?
My training? No. Always training. The uniform I am told it is the dark saber.
Pause.
Reborn. The Butcher. Temple Guard.
Star Killer.
Ventress.
Leia.
There are also 12 different ignition types that you can choose and basically assign to any sound font. You can cycle through them by holding the power button when the saber is on but not activated. Unfortunately, you can't go backwards with these. You have to cycle all the way through if you're not using the app. Let's go through each of these.
Hunter Ignition. Cross Ignition. Phaser Ignition. Photon Ignition. Broken Ignition. Burst Ignition. Hunter Stack Ignition. Oh my G. Stack Ignition. Sputtering Ignition. Standard Ignition.
And finally, there are a number of blade types that you can cycle through, which, like the ignition type, will remain with the currently selected sound font until you change it. And unfortunately, just like the ignition types, I don't think there's any way for you to select backwards. You just have to cycle all the way through them to get to a previous one, or use the app.
Unstable Blade. Pulse Blade. Rainbow Blade. Infinite Blade. Wave Blade. Fire Blade. Slash blade. Crack blade. Custom blade 1. Custom blade 2. Custom blade 3. Custom blade 4. Custom blade 5. Custom blade 6. Custom blade 7. Custom blade 8. Custom blade 9. Custom blade 10.
Alright, here are my thoughts on the Darth Vader Episode 5 NeoPixel Saber by nSaber. Generally, I think the saber is great. It's definitely the coolest one I've ever owned, and I'll list out the things I like most, but first I have a sort of wish list for this saber that I think could enhance it for future customers. Incidentally, none of these improvements would cost the company any real money. Bigger paper instructions manual. The instructions are all online, but it would be cool if they could include a paper manual that had bigger text. The 6 or 8-point font that they're rocking on the paper manual is not great for legibility and quick referencing. No saber label. I'm sure that they have some compelling reason to include the little tag that reads saber in Arabesh, but it's the one major impediment to screen accuracy, and you have to have a tiny flathead screwdriver on hand to remove it. If they don't have a good reason to include this tag, then it would probably reduce their expenses just to omit the tag in the future. And honestly, when I see the tag on the product page, it really detracts me from wanting this saber because I don't know if something like this is removable. Parity between sound font name in app and from saber. If they could clean up the sound font names a bit on the app and just name them after the characters with normalized capitalization, and then have those same names spoken with a single voice and nothing more when selecting the font on the physical blade, then that would be a massive improvement to both the user experience and for the appearance of professionalism. Ironically, I think if they're worried about copyright or trademark infringement, then they're doing more harm by including actual sound bites from the Star Wars movies and shows than by just saying the names of the characters in every instance. And they do say the names of some of the characters anyway, so I don't know what's going on. Consistency across the board would go a long way. Go backwards on ignition and blade type selection. Thank goodness you can go backwards when cycling through the 25 sound fonts, but you really should be able to also go backwards on the ignition and blade modes as well. I spent a lot of time having to go forward on these settings to get to the one I wanted. If there is a way to go backwards on these settings and I missed it, please let me know in the comments. All that being said, it is ultra simple to go back and forth on any setting in the mobile app. Need more realistic ignition types. There is so much potential with the NeoPixel LED system because you can do all kinds of linear light animations. And clearly they've tried to make the most of this with 12 different ignition types. But I've watched a lot of Star Wars, and honestly, I can't recall any time in which a lightsaber started in a non-contiguous manner. In other words, the blade needs to look like it's coming from the hilt and not starting in mid-air. This may seem limiting, but there are tons of animations that they can do within that limitation. Currently, out of the 12 ignitions, I think I really just like the standard one and sputtering. Pros. So, like I said, this is by far the best saber I've ever owned, and there's a lot to love about it. Quality. The blade itself is a heavy-duty, high-impact plastic. The hilt is composed of a ton of machined metal, and along with the internals, and the battery, it's a surprisingly heavy artifact. The rubber rail grips have just the right feel of pliability and firmness, and the plastic components feel like durable ABS-like plastic. Sound. I don't think there are any sound fonts that I didn't like. The sound design has just gotten better and better over the years with all of these saber makers, and nSaber seems like they're very much on top of it. Pretty importantly, the swinging sound correlates really well with the accelerometer's detection of motion, so you really get the sensation that your movements are causing the sounds directly with a live blade, even though it's an illusion, of course. Lights. The main star of the show with this saber is the NeoPixel system, which allows for multicolor animated light shows inside the blade. I'm definitely a little late to the party when it comes to this innovation in sabers, but there's no denying it's a complete revolution. Although I'm not a fan of every single animation or color combination that comes stock with this blade, the app allows for a lot of customization, so they've essentially handed you the reins on endless possibilities with light patterns and colors. App. The app is pretty impressive. I didn't have any problems with connectivity, and I think that's mostly due to the Bluetooth adapter in the saber itself, and the ease of use was pretty high. Again, I really appreciate the customizability of the saber's performance. I have yet to deep dive into the customization, but I like the fact that it's there. And from what little I've messed with it, custom settings really do just work. So yeah, that's the nSaber NeoPixel version of Darth Vader's Episode 5 lightsaber. I've left a link below through which you can get a bit of a discount as well as support the channel with any purchase. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback down below. And may the Force be with you, always.